Hey guys, really quickly before the video begins, I just want to bring to light a response from the dev team responsible for overseeing the global version of Persona 5 The Phantom X. While I don't go into too much detail over the drama concerning the game, they did release a statement earlier this morning as of July 17th, 2025. I think the most important part about the tweet is the beginning, where they state, "We have received many comments about the operation of P5X. We take your feedback very seriously, and we will be explaining our future operation plans in the next broadcast." While this isn't the most ideal response, it is a response at the very least, but I think it would be fair to assume that they understand that global players are outraged over their handling of the game. However, I wouldn't necessarily hold your head high just yet, because I believe the game is at a point where the next stream will either pull players back into the game, or just completely destroy the global audience. The biggest frustration, I feel, is that they've been very poor in their efforts of communication with the player base. So naturally, whether or not all criticisms are fair, players can only speculate as the team stays silent. I also want to mention that they never explicitly state that they will address all the concerns and criticisms they've received over the past couple of weeks. They only say that they'll explain their future operation plans. While yes, technically they can address concerns in this way, I would still just take things with a grain of salt until we get all the information from the broadcast. Alright, thanks guys. Enjoy the video.
Persona 5 The Phantom X is awful. It's a spin-off that spits in the face of its source material, so eager to beat a dead horse for profit that it is willing to don a paltry mask of fan service and nostalgia bait to lure in unsuspecting fans while discarding every piece of actually good game design that has made the series so beloved. But it's free, so it hit a higher day one player count on Steam than fucking Royal did. And that's fun. Fun? After spending several months last year on a video essay about why gacha is bad, I'm not looking to repeat myself on why gacha is bad. The reason I've chosen to cover this new weed upon its global release is because it isn't just some anime IP I don't care about. It's Persona, a series that means a great deal to me. While a lot of the critiques I'm about to make are nothing groundbreaking, I feel they're worth highlighting in direct comparison to Persona 5's structure to demonstrate just how much the gacha formula eats away at the series' core.
All right, before we even go any further, I haven't watched the entire video, and I haven't heard his reasonings for why he's gonna say the game is bad. I'm gonna partially agree, but also I am gonna partially disagree with that, because I do think that the gameplay core is actually decent. Like I actually think that the game has good things going for it, very clearly by its apparent success. However, there's a lot of things that the devs are doing wrong, and things that are killing the game and isolating its player base. Boy, I haven't heard that one before, huh? That's the first time from any developers to do that. However, like I said, the game is not in itself entirely bad, but it does have bad aspects of it, which I suppose one could argue would make the game bad. But I'll wait to watch and find out what his reasonings are. Have those new gacha currency rules started rolling out? You mean the one where they have to tell you how much you might have to spend in order to get a 5-star on the banners? Yes, they have rolled out, and they've been implemented already, for example, in Hoyoverse games and some other gacha games that I've seen. However, because I do personally play Persona 5, The Phantom X, I actually, believe it or not, have not seen that in this game. I haven't. So it's odd because it is implemented in Hoyoverse games, so like Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, Honkai Impact 3rd, Zenless Zone Zero, like those type of games, but it's not implemented in this gacha game, which is odd. The one thing I will say though is that the devs are pretty greedy, and everything in this game is basically like monetized. It almost reminds me of like walking into an EA simulation here. It's like, shit, dude. They want you to buy and purchase like oh, you completed a chapter 1. Come get this chapter 1 pack in the shop now for $5.99, $2.99 for completing chapter 2. $14.99 for this currency. There's a starter banner pool for 10.99 or something like that. And it's predatory. It's crazy. The amount of things that they try to monetize is insane. But I'll get into all of that before, or not before, after we watch some of the video and see what he has to say. As far as that stuff goes, there is one thing I do want to point out with the gacha and the currency, though, specifically. It is misleading. And I know Fortnite was in a recent lawsuit about how they were misleading with their microtransactions in the game. And they ended up losing that lawsuit and forced to pay out millions of dollars to players that were affected by unwanted purchases in the Epic Games shop. If Fortnite got sued for that and lost, by the way, I honestly feel like Persona 5 the Phantom X can also fall into that same category, because I do believe that they genuinely mislead the consumer when trying to purchase a microtransaction.
Phantom X is the video game equivalent of a fucking skinwalker, and I can't fully describe how depressing it feels to play. It looks like Persona 5, it has the same soundtrack and sound effects as Persona 5, the characters sit at the same booth at the same restaurant with the same camera angles, you can upgrade your social stats with daily life activities, buy medicine from Takemi, infiltrate palaces, and perform all-out attacks. You can even hang out with the original cast at LeBlanc. While I was playing, my brain would occasionally send me dopamine because it thought I was playing Persona 5, but then I'd look at it for more than 5 seconds and see its neck crack and joints bend backwards as it lurched towards my wallet.
Yo, dude,
Right, but I unlocked
Pass.
the Phantom Pass, Condi.
Holy shit, dude.
The Battle Pass! Phantom X opens identically to Persona 5, even reusing the same cutscene and opening sequence to justify implementing characters from the original game and Persona 3 through an alternate universe gimmick. However, as you play, it slowly drops in more menu options and features before, fittingly, ripping its mask off about 2 hours in.
Good
Once
pun.
the floodgates open, the screen becomes covered in noisy UI elements, dopamine breadcrumb trails, and FOMO purchase pop-ups that have become synonymous with modern gacha design.
Right.
It ends in 3 days. Condi.
Shit, dude. Okay, calm down, chill. Okay, calm down. I need.
You know what? I'm not gonna lie though. Honestly, for a deal like this, I don't even think that this is the worst thing in the world. And the reason is because they only offer you this package if you have the character to begin with. So for example, the character on this box is a 5-star character. And this in here is her dupe. So it's her constellation, if you will. If you don't play gacha games, and if you don't know, any character that gets a constellation, or if you pull a duplicate of that character, you have what's called a constellation. And these dupes or constellations, in this game, it's called awareness. They essentially unlock a special ability for that 5-star unit, or honestly for any unit, to make them stronger. So if you don't know, usually it takes, I'd say, average around maybe 90 pulls or something like that till you hit hard pity. And when you hit pity, you're guaranteed a 5-star character. The catch is, you don't know if it's the character that you wished for on the banner, or if it's a standard banner character, which means these standard banner characters will always be there no matter what. And it's the limited character that you're really after. The thing is, with gacha, it's almost essentially basically just gambling, right? You are paying money in order to get currency to wish or try to pull a 5-star character. The catch is, you don't know if you're going to get it, which is why I say it's like gambling. The thing that differentiates it from actual gambling is that there is a pity system implemented in a gacha game, which means after pulling a certain amount of times, you're guaranteed to get the character. You might spend anywhere from a couple bucks to a couple $100 trying to get a 5-star limited character. So when I say that this deal itself isn't that bad, it's because you're essentially getting a duplicate of the 5-star character. So you're getting their constellation or their awareness, if you will, and then an extra 1,000 for about $16, 17 bucks almost, basically rounded, 51 cents. But I honestly feel like because of the unpredictability for how much you could potentially pay in order to get the character, $17 actually isn't that bad. So that's why I say personally, it's not that bad of a deal. However, that's just like in defense of this specific deal. That's not to say that the whole game isn't filled with these kind of deals and is constantly urging the player to buy these deals. Couple $100 was a Phantom. You must be speaking from experience. No, I'm not speaking from experience. Okay, yeah. I'm speaking from experience. The game itself is in competition. It's on par with Clash Royale in terms of trying to get you to buy items, buy packages, buy deals that you don't want. Now, I'm being honest here, okay? But, like I said, this deal itself is not necessarily the worst deal to buy if you are going to buy something.
You
Okay.
find your wallet.
Okay. It's right here. It's on my desk already.
Okay, open it up.
Okay.
Pull out your credit card
Okay.
and read me those numbers so I can get this deal for myself.
Okay, 1, 2,
Okay.
3. I genuinely don't know where to begin with this shit, so I'll start with the feature that presents itself first, the narrative. The introduction and first palace are just bad. Persona 5 is already a pretty self-contained story. If I'm being charitable, I could say Strikers had some decent moments despite being a bit rehashy, but this is not a universe that needs to be further explored, or even worse, repeated. The only thing Phantom X really manages in its opening act is copying Persona 5's homework as closely as possible, but
True.
just the handwriting, not the heart. Nothing major happens to the main character to kick off the events of the game. He's just an apathetic high school student that has a fanfic nightmare about being Joker and then killing Joker, I guess. He doesn't even seem to really give a shit about becoming a Phantom Thief. I've done some research into later palaces and do want to at least acknowledge that they get a bit different, but most of what's present for me to evaluate in the global launch is the first palace, and boy does it give a terrible impression. While Kamoshida serves as a powerful introduction to the themes of Persona 5 through his abuse of other students, the first villain in Phantom X, Kyuchi, likes pushing people in the subway. Sexual harassment on trains is a genuine issue in Japan, but it's hard to take anything seriously here when the localization nicknames him the Subway Slammer, and he runs around yelling, "The entire subway is mine for the slamming." Why does he do this? Because he's so mad that a girl beat him in a game of baseball one time that he hates all women now. Fucking LMAO, dude. His true villain moment comes when he shoves Motoha's friend Tomoko into the tracks, injuring her and giving Motoha a stronger reason to awaken to her persona. And how does Motoha awaken to her persona? Well, by having her life threatened while being chained up to a BDSM X-Cross, of course. I'd call it plagiarism, but I guess in some ways it's just a franchise plagiarizing itself? Oh, and remember how the threat of Kamoshida expelling everyone ties the villain's motives to the palace deadline? Well, since there's no deadlines in this game, the ultimate threat is that Kyuchi might push a baby down the stairs. Lufel, the game's Morgana, is a similar shtick, a creature born from humanity's desires that has amnesia but thinks stealing treasures from palaces will help get his memories back.
Okay, so I will say this in defense of the game, right? You can't knock Phantom X for having Lufel as their mascot character, because every Persona game from at least 3, 4, and 5 has these mascot characters. I don't know about 1 and 2 because I haven't played 1 and 2. They're just way too old for me to even bother to try to get into. And the gameplay is vastly different than what you see Persona as a franchise nowadays. Not to say that the games are bad, but I just have not played them. And I don't know anything about them either. But you can't knock them for having a character like this. What has gone? What? Okay. You can't knock them for having a character like this in Phantom X. That's what I'll say for 1. 2, in defense of the developers for Phantom X, yes, they do essentially copy Persona 5's first palace as closely as possible and make some minor adjustments. However, I do believe that the stigma for doing this is mostly because if you're launching a game, first of all, that's in the title, Persona 5, the Phantom X, you would assume it has to take place in the same universe, or at least in a similar universe, but with separate modifications, which it does. The other thing is that they don't want to release a game, I feel like personally, and this might be speculation, but they're not going to want to release a game that is too different from other previous Persona games and too new to the point where it could possibly overshadow something like a future Persona 6 release, when or if they ever decide to do that. Because I know fans have been asking that for the past, like, almost decade at this point. But yeah, I feel like at this point, you know, this is a gacha game, so it is assumably long running, which means it will have content for at least a couple years going down the line. And I know that they're remaking Persona 4 at the moment, but Persona 6 has to be somewhere along the horizon. They have been very, very silent about anything concerning Persona 6, and I've given no information about it. But I do feel like Persona 6 would be in direct competition with a game like Persona 5X if it was to be that much different from the base Persona 5. So I'll give them that in their defense. However, I am disappointed with the copy my homework as closely as you can without making it seem like it's mine, you know? Like, I do want some more originality in these palaces. And again, global launch has only gotten the first 2 palaces so far, and the second palace is very different than the first one. And I'd say the second palace is actually a lot more different than previous palaces that we've seen. So I'm not even gonna knock it. What I will knock, though, in the palace is the gameplay variety, because the map itself, it feels like it's like copy paste, copy paste, copy paste. What I mean by that is, like, there might be a section of the game, like, let's say this section of the game right here is like completely different. It's like new, there's new puzzles. But then the more you explore in the game, it's like, well, it's the same exact part of the map, but maybe it's like this, you know? Maybe it's rotated. Maybe it's like this instead. Or maybe it's like this, you know? Where I see the same exact room like 500 times, the same pattern, the same, you know, consistent pathways. You gotta make something more original. To make matters worse, though, is the content in the palaces for this gacha mobile game. It's actually not even that. It's not a little. It's actually a lot. Like, it's not that little. They have a decent amount of content for the palaces. In trying to 100% it, it's kind of time consuming, I'm not gonna lie. I do like the fact that they have a lot of content, especially for a gacha game. But I don't like I said, the amount of copy paste rooms that I've seen throughout the map. But yeah, you know, I do think they could have more original puzzles, and they do. They have some differences in the puzzles from this game and the base Persona 5 game. But, you know, I feel like people would much rather have Persona 6 than just have another Persona 5 spinoff. Like, we already have P5, we have P5 Royal, we have Persona 5 Dance, we have Persona 5 Strikers, we have, I don't even know, bro, that Persona collaboration game. We don't need Phantom X, let's be honest. We want Persona 6, and I think most fans do.
So far, though, outside of an antiquated way of speaking, he doesn't seem to have the insecurities or quirks that make Morgana so annoying yet significant to the later plot developments of Persona 5. So, there's our half-baked narrative, with little gems given out after every cutscene to make sure you feel extrinsically motivated. Guess it's time to infiltrate the palace, right? Wait, don't we need social links first, and social stats, and personas, and teammates? Oh boy. There is no true calendar system in this game. Every action can be done at any point, given you have enough of the recharging energy that serves to time gate content
Stamina.
and keep you coming back.
That's daily stamina, by the way.
But before I get mad about that, let me get mad about combat and palaces. Now, I love Persona 5, but I think the biggest issue with that game is that you have to play it. Luckily, Phantom X has alleviated that issue with gacha power creep and an auto button. Shin Megami Tensei combat is already fun, and the Persona series iterates on it with social link fusion mechanics and tension in dungeons with SP management, deadlines, and the calendar system. Phantom X does not do any of this. It kinda has the same combat, and you can still fuse and equip multiple personas on the main character, albeit in a very mobile game grindy way with no connection to social links or arcanas, but the better comparison here would be something like Honkai Star Rail. Every character obtainable from the gacha is preset with 4 abilities and 2 passives. These abilities are more complex than the moves normally found in Persona, but remove any player agency from building loadouts by turning everyone into power creepable archetypes with preset strategies and ideal team comps. And speaking of characters, narrative cohesion is gone. Instead of your—
Okay, I want to say, though, you know, I know he's going to shit on the stamina system, which I agree to an extent, but it is a gacha game, and because it's a gacha game, you have to implement some kind of cooldown for that. I mean, you can't— this is not exclusive to P5X, right? Honkai Star Rail has it. Genshin Impact has it. Zenless Zone Zero has it. Your favorite gacha game has daily stamina. It doesn't matter what gacha game you're playing. As long as it's live service, you're gonna and it's gacha, you're gonna have a stamina consumption. So, honestly, even though the stamina consumption in this game might be kind of shit, which I think it is because I feel like it costs way too much stamina to even attempt to tackle like one run of maybe materials or maybe level up materials, ascension materials, personas. You can farm for personas in this game, by the way. Well, I should say more correctly, you can farm for their seals or their duplicates. But I'm not going to knock them for implementing that because that's just the nature of gacha, right? Every gacha game has it, so I mean, you can't just solely get mad at Persona 5X for that.
Party members being introduced one by one with their own awakenings and story connections, you can just throw anyone in the party. I've got On from Persona 5, even though she doesn't exist, this Chinese girl I met on the street, and this ice girl, I guess. And my navigator? Oh, she's the married woman that lives across the street.
Really?
No idea.
Is she actually? I didn't know that.
How she got a persona, though. For a good chunk of the first palace, I was running around with 4 people I knew absolutely nothing about as they yelled out their signature dialogue lines or snuck up behind me like we've been besties for months. Also, does that chest opening animation look familiar? Actually, does everything look familiar? The word spin-off usually implies an alternate form of gameplay, structure, or style. You know, like a Muso beat-em-up, a chibi tactics game, or a rhythm game. But this really is just Persona 5 if it was bad. As is the case for just about every turn-based gacha, you can level and buff the hell out of your units to the point where you can auto through 90% of combat until you hit the end game, which is just so cool. Great game design. Maybe in a few weeks you'll hit a mission that's tough enough to require spending money first. In about 15 hours of
okay, that's what I don't like, and I'll say that about every gacha game. If there's a game where they up the difficulty to a point where you might actually do have to spend money on these premium limited characters in order to clear the content, yeah, bye-bye. You shouldn't— no one should be playing that game. That game is only for whales or people that are like they fall for it. They want to play that game. They're pay to win, right? Clash Royale, I'm sorry, I'm gonna keep bringing it up. Most of the people, aside from these past couple months, because I know Jinxie has been doing his due diligence, right? Most of the people that play Clash Royale are, let's be real, they just pay with their credit cards and they win. It's actually pay to win versus pay to win. Those are the players left on that game because the dev team destroyed their original fan base, their original player base. Any gacha game that does this kind of, they implement this kind of content in the game to force you to pay money, you shouldn't even be playing it then. That's it. Like you're isolating half of your player base, your free to play casual players, from the ones that just pay to win. How is that fun? People don't need to spend money in order to have fun in something, right? Now for this game, you like, I understand he might get upset, and this is where I'm going to defend it, right? He might get upset at some of the mechanics and like, again, copying things one for one, like he's been saying, and it's true. They do copy stuff, and I will knock them. I will knock them for this. Yes, the game, you explore the dungeons with characters you don't know nothing about, and that's what feels the most inauthentic about it. But I think it's more so like, for example, the characters that you can get them from wishing on the gacha banners. So it makes sense that you don't know anything about them if you obtain them from wishing. Usually they give you characters as the story goes on. Like in the base Persona 5 game, you don't get to play with Makoto until you unlock her part of the story, and then she gets her persona, and then you can add her to your team, right? Before that, you only are limited to the players and the character arcs that you've completed. So the very first palace is On's palace, but you don't get to use on your team until she awakens to her persona. So you're stuck with Ryuji and yourself, of course, with Morgana, right? And I think that's fine. And you get to, that's how, like, that's a good way to put it. But this is a gacha game, so you're getting these characters from summon systems, which you don't have in the base game. So I feel like it's not necessarily a one-to-one fair comparison because of the way you're obtaining these characters. Of course, they still implement that in this game where, let's say in Arc 2, sorry for spoilers, you get a character named Shun, and you actually get him added to your team by default when he unlocks his persona, you know, when you get to that character arc. However, you can already have him in your team from the first palace if you got him in the gacha banner, the gacha wishes, right? So, you know, I understand the fact that you're exploring with unfamiliar characters and players, but how can you really criticize that if the way you obtain these characters is by the gacha system? Like, I don't feel like it's a fair comparison, because one is a story-based game where you follow a linear path and only a linear path for its gameplay. This is a gacha game, and yes, while you do still follow a linear path, you can branch out of that path to other aspects of the game in order to move forward. So I can join a clan in this game while I'm still on Palace 1. I can wish for characters, get 5-star characters in this game while I'm still on Palace 1. Like, it's a gacha game. What do you expect, you know?
Nothing about as they yelled out their signature dialogue lines or snuck up behind me like we've been besties for months. Also, does that chest opening animation look familiar? Act 3, normally found in Persona?
Oh yeah, the other thing is, yeah, the complicated things. One thing you said is that the skills are also complicated in the game, and that's true, they are. However, the grind really comes from the relics or the artifact system that you have. If you replace gacha with shitty and everything you said, it makes more sense. Well, you say it's shitty, which I can understand, because like I said, I am also I am defending them, but I'm also criticizing it at the same time. You say it's shitty, but then how else would you implement that in a gacha game? What would you pull for in gacha then? Because it's a Persona game, right? You don't really summon necessarily personas. You summon characters with personas. So they're like, I don't know, it's kind of similar to a game called Pokemon Masters EX. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. They turned Pokemon into a gacha game. The baseline of it is you summon for specific characters in the Pokemon universe, but with like a specialized partnered Pokemon. So for example, I can summon Red with Pikachu, or I can summon for Cynthia with Giratina, but maybe there's another variant of the character that comes out, let's say next year, where I can summon for Cynthia and Togekiss, or Cynthia and Garchomp. Like, those are different, like, they're the same character, but what's changing is the Pokemon and the skills that they're used, or just the overall. That is like the overall summon entity. In this game, I guess you could go about summoning for characters with different personas, but I feel like what else would you summon for? Because the core gameplay of Persona is similar to Pokemon. It's like a turn-based game where you summon or you fuse different personas to get more personas, and you battle in a turn-based order, in a turn-based fashion. What are you summoning for in the gacha? Now you can argue that, hey, maybe the game shouldn't even be a gacha game in the first place. And to that, I would say I agree. However, it is a gacha game, and I feel like for what they have at the moment, there's nothing else you can really summon for other than characters, I guess, and their specific personas that you can't otherwise get, even in the base game. So, like, I feel like you got to take that into consideration at the very least. Now, does that make that any less shitty of an implementation than it already is? No, because like I said, honestly, we shouldn't even really have this game be a gacha. I think most players want just Persona 6. They don't want, like he was saying, an expanded spin-off of Persona 5 for the 50 billionth time.
Which is just so cool. Great game design. Maybe in a few weeks you'll hit a mission that's tough enough to require spending money first. In about 15 hours of gameplay, I think I had 2 interesting fights where the difficulty stars aligned and the game felt like a normal RPG for a few minutes before I shuddered at the thought that this is gonna be a bunch of people's introduction to Persona. I don't have a lot to say about Mementos other than again mentioning that removing every piece of regular game design turns an already mediocre side dungeon into a mindless breadcrumb trail. And I'm being as close to literal as I'll probably get in this video, as there are actual trails of colorful train tickets you have to pick up and redeem for rewards along the way. That's about it for combat though, so let's talk about the other half. Persona is a series about time. It's about who you choose to spend your valuable fleeting days with. It's about the goddamn calendar that sits in the top left of the screen, an omnipresent reminder that there is finite time in your story and it's up to you to make the most of it. In Phantom X, the only thing stopping you from maxing out every social stat and grinding out infinite resources before exploring a palace is the real-life days it takes to regenerate your city exploration points and memento stamina. When you finish a night activity and go to bed, the calendar shifts from yesterday to today endlessly. It's just surreal to me that they chose to make Phantom X feel like the original game, even though it couldn't implement any of the shit that actually makes Persona Persona. Even the few features that remain have been mangled in some way. Reading texts gives you gems to pull. Cutscenes give you gems to pull. Chests give you gems to pull. Daily life activities like watching movies or studying in the library give you gems to pull. Social links aren't a way to implement fun decision-making and planning while deepening relationships and unlocking fusion bonus.
So I am going to criticize that. I will say this about as far as the gems. I think it's fine that they have multiple ways to get gems in the game, because otherwise there's no other way you can get the currency, realistically at least, except for the events and exploring the palaces, which do give a lot, by the way. But I am pretty disappointed with the social life or the social hangouts, because none of it is really well, first of all, it's not even voiced in English, so none of the entire game is voiced in English at all. It's all in Japanese, which is okay, but when you're playing a game like this, it might be nice to hear some English voices instead of having to read everything for yourself. But none of the actual hangouts themselves are really voiced at all, and it doesn't feel like they have unique like hangout interactions, where it just feels like it's just jumbled text that you can just skip. And that is my criticism of that aspect of the game. But then what he talked about also recently is that the calendar system doesn't exist, so that sense of urgency isn't there And a lot of these things that you do are not time gated. So, perhaps the things that you do in the game they're not as meaningful as they might have once been. But this is where the drama comes in. And might be a completely separate video. I'll make a separate video on this, and I'm going to talk about it as well. But just to give you a little bit of a rehash, the drama is that the global players, because this just recently released for global, the global players, basically US-based players, people who read this in English, play this in English, or, the text in English at least, their treatment, like, it's a gacha game, so the developers give rewards, they update the game, blah, 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 blah. Their treatment for global players has been abysmal compared to the Chinese player base. And the developers of this game are Chinese, by the way. It's a Chinese developer, Chinese game. So it makes sense that China is getting all the preferential treatment, but they're killing the game for the global players because of this exact preferential treatment. Players actually know what's going to happen in the future of the game because it's been released to China for about almost a year now, I would say, where they know the future palaces, the future upcoming characters, the future awards. And so there are players that plan around these things because they want to get certain characters and have enough to be able to pull for them. But what they've done for global players is they've changed the rewards. They give actually less rewards in the global than they do for the Chinese servers. So it messes people up. Not to mention that they actually sped up the time in between updates, so players don't have as much time to save or to work on certain aspects of the game before the next character is already out released. So they speed up the schedule for global players, but they don't offer the reward compensation for that speeding up of the schedule. So it leaves players in like a bind. Not to mention the fact that every character, like if you pull for a DPS damage character, they will be power crept within maybe a month or 2 months because of the speed of how they put out updates. You see where the problems are coming in? Now, I know power creep is obviously a terrible thing for any gacha game, and it has unfortunately has happened in many different gacha games. Honkai Star Rail, for example, is one of them. But I feel like Persona takes that to like the extreme, where it's like they might be up here and other games might be like right here. Unfortunately, power creep is common in this game, and it makes all these characters makes them feel a lot less worth it. Like they don't have as much limelight or spotlight, The speed up is definitely still there. The pressure is definitely still there. So even though they don't have the calendar system, the developers have made sure that there is a sense of urgency in the game.
As they've been twisted into another drip feed that gates rewards and mechanics behind a long-term grind. The Thieves' Den was an extra content section added to Royal where you could chill out, listen to music, and play cards while admiring concept art. But now, the concept art costs currency that you earn from sending your party members to visit the town hall that increases your Pevel, which can be upgraded by strengthening your characters to increase your Quevel. And these are real things in the game that are going to make me commit
this is stupid. I'll be honest,
crime.
it's overcomplicated.
A significantly worse version of Persona 5's opening act, covered in the grime of mobile retention mechanics, did not give me any indication that Phantom X is hiding some massive revelation up its sleeve. But even if it is, waiting through the malaise as new palaces are released in chunks over the course of 2 to 3 years does not sound appealing. In the first 2 hours, Phantom X gives you 3 separate microtransaction pop-ups that add up to more money than the default price of Persona 5 Royal.
Oh, fuck, Condi.
Oh,
Fuck.
shit, dude. Okay.
Fuck.
I'll take one for the team. Where's my wallet?
$25! And the first palace even concludes with a congratulatory pop-up.
Yeah.
Oh, but now that you've beaten that boss, would you like to spend $3.99?
Just a suggestion.
You have to do it within the next 3 days, though.
So, like, did we forget about the entire arc in Persona 5 where the villain is an old guy that exploits passionate artists to plagiarize their work and profit off of counterfeit paintings? Or I don't know, the palace that was a fucking casino? Oh, of course we didn't forget those dungeons. Those are backdrops for the material grinding quests and crossover events. I don't know, man. Persona 5 was never an anti-capitalist spearhead, and Joker and the gang have already shown up as collabs in other gachas, but it feels pretty ironic to slap its name on this husk of a spin-off that completely disregards the human values at the core of its source material to make some extra cash off of brand loyalty. I know there are plenty of people excited to sink their teeth into more of the same, but my heart always sinks a little when I watch a piece of art I love get stretched so thin that it becomes hard to remember what it looked like back when it was just the piece of art I love. I will say though, Lin and the Atlas team are still making bangers, but with this being the 4th spin-off in the Persona 5 extended cinematic universe, I'm just surprised that they haven't run out of ways to make new versions of Life Will Change and Last Surprise. They're getting a lot of mileage off of that little
You know what? They are.
At worst, Phantom X was 15 hours of my life I'll never get back, and at best, it was a cathartic writing exercise. I swear to God, if I have to talk about this franchise again before Persona 6, I might crash out. I'm tired. And thank you for watching. You can subscribe if you want to.
All right.
And I'm gonna go play Night Rain.
That's so funny. Okay. Well, first of all, here's the video if anyone wants to watch that. Brandon used to be Marlin, but now he's Lacey. What are you talking about? I'm not even close to Lacey, bro. I'll go put on 20 t-shirts right now, and then I'll be Lacey. Anyways, sorry, Lacey. No strays. No, I didn't mean to do that. I'm sorry. Yeah, no. But anyways, the point is, I think the video was fine, and I think he has valid points for sure, but he didn't expand upon that, probably for the sake of time and not to ramble too much. But what he's saying at base is mostly true, but I think it's more than just that. Like it branches out into other aspects of it, you know?